The Night Orchard. Thalia's feet knew the path to the night orchard even when her mind was lost. Tonight it was lost in the clatter of the market, the weight of copper coins, and the hollow echo of her own name on the lips of people who needed her labor, not her soul. She was a weaver of remarkable skill, her tapestries capturing the very texture of dawn mist and the fire of autumn leaves. Yet she wove the dreams of others, wedding scenes, heroic battles, pious saints. Her own dreams had become like pale threads, frayed and forgotten on the loom. The villagers spoke of the orchard in hushed tones, a place you went when the world's truth became too heavy a disguise. It wasn't on any map, but found you when the full moon silvered the landscape and your longing was a quiet, persistent ache. Thalia passed the last sleeping farmhouse, its windows dark, and entered the whispering wood. The trees here grew close, their branches knitting a canopy that muted the moon into scattered, shifting coins of light. The air cooled, smelling of damp moss and something else, a faint, cold sweetness, like the memory of a blossom. For 20 minutes, by the moon's slow crawl, she walked. The market's noise faded, replaced by the rustle of unseen creatures and the soft sigh of the wind. Her thoughts unraveled from the day's tensions. She wasn't thinking of Master Corvin's demanding orders or the emptiness of her small cottage. She was simply walking, her breath pluming in the chill, her heart a quiet drum in the silence. Then the trees parted. The night orchard opened before her, a wide, gentle bowl in the land, bathed in undiluted moonlight. It was utterly silent, but not dead, a held breath. The trees were unlike any she had seen. Their bark was the color of weathered silver, and their leaves were dark, velvety pools that drank the light, and from their branches hung the fruit. They glowed with a soft internal luminescence. Some were orbs of milky pearl, others like captured star shards, amethyst or deep sapphire. They pulsed gently, in time, Thalia fancied, with the beat of her own heart. The cold sweetness was stronger here, intoxicating and clean. The stories were clear. You took only one. To gorge was to unravel the soul. Thalia moved between the trees, her shadow a stark companion on the moon-bleached grass. She felt no fear, only a profound, deepening stillness. Which one called to her? A perfect, pearlescent sphere? A cluster of tiny topaz berries? Her gaze settled on a fruit hanging from a low, graceful bough. It was the shape of a teardrop, its skin a translucent silver, and within a swirl of gold and deepest blue swam slowly, like ink and oil. It was beautiful, and it felt familiar. Without further thought, she reached out. The stem parted with a soft sigh, and the fruit fell into her palm. It was cool, heavier than it looked, and the light within swirled faster at her touch. She found a fallen log at the edge of the orchard, sat and cradled the fruit. What was her true desire? Wealth? Recognition? A love she had not met? She took a breath and bit into it. The skin yielded without resistance. The taste was not of any fruit she knew. It was the taste of moonlight on a still lake, of the first note of a song half remembered, of the quiet after snow. It dissolved on her tongue, and a warmth flooded her, starting in her chest and radiating outward to her fingertips and toes. Then the world dissolved. Not the orchard, but the world inside her. Visions, not as images, but as sensations, crashed over her. Not the feel of gold coins, but the gritty, satisfying texture of raw, undyed wool between her fingers. Not the roar of an admiring crowd, but the profound, absorbing silence of her workshop at dusk, broken only by the thump-thump of the loom. She felt the fierce, private joy of watching a color emerge on the thread she'd just dyed with madder root, a red deeper and truer than she'd planned. She smelled the tang of the dye vat, the earthy scent of the loom's wood. The visions came faster. She saw her hands not just weaving, but painting with thread, creating not a scene for a patron's hall, but a vast, wild tapestry of a forest that existed only in her mind, where the greens were 100 different shades, and the creatures in the shadows had eyes of glittering, misunderstood wisdom. She felt the desire to capture the sound of the wind in the whispering wood, the feeling of this very moonlight in warp and weft. It was a desire not for an end product, praise, payment, but for the process itself, the endless, joyful, frustrating, glorious exploration of color, texture, and story that lived in her hands and heart. The fruit's warmth concentrated in her palms, a tingling, potent energy. She looked down. In the moonlight, her skilled weaver's hands seemed to shimmer. Calluses from the shuttle were there, but the lines on her palms looked like faint silver threads, maps of potential. The vision faded, leaving her back on the log in the quiet orchard. The empty, translucent skin of the fruit lay in her palm, already crumbling into motes of light that drifted away on the air. She felt no different, and yet she was utterly transformed. There was no grand revelation of a hidden destiny, no sudden craving for a person or a place. Instead, a deep settled knowing filled the hollow ache she had carried. Her true desire was not something to get, but something to do. It was the work itself, her craft, but unshackled from the demands of others. It was the freedom to follow the whimsical thread of her own inspiration, to make mistakes only she would see, to create beauty for its own sake, to pour the fullness of her silent, observant heart into the loom. Thalia stood. The orchard seemed to approve. The pulsing lights in the trees softened to a gentle, sleepy rhythm. The path back through the whispering wood seemed clearer, the moonlight brighter. She didn't hurry. When she reached her cottage, the first hint of dawn was a gray smudge in the east. She did not go to bed. She walked to her workshop, still in her cloak, and lit a single candle. It fought bravely against the retreating night. She went to her stores and pulled out a bundle of rough, undyed linen thread and a skein of wool the color of old cream. Then she went to her dye pots, not with a plan for a commissioned border or a figured scene, but with a feeling. She measured madder root, but added a pinch of walnut husk, thinking of shadow. She crushed woad leaves, but let them steep a little less, dreaming of a sky just after twilight. As the new sun finally painted the horizon, Thalia sat at her loom. She did not sketch a pattern, she simply began to weave. The first threads were the color of the night orchard's silver bark, the next the deep velvety blue of its leaves. She wove in the cream for the moonlight and the shadowy gray-brown. She didn't know what it would become, a forest, a sky, a feeling. It didn't matter. The shuttle flew in her hand, no longer a tool of trade, but an extension of the desire the moon-ripened fruit had revealed. The thump, thump, thump of the beater was a steady, joyful heartbeat, and for the first time in years, weaving did not feel like filling orders. It felt perfectly and completely like coming home. The true desire, it turned out, was not a destination to be reached, but the path itself, finally recognized and claimed, one thread at a time, under the warm gaze of the rising sun.